Hi to all. So in this video, we will quickly solve a problem about the weighted average cost of capital. So in other words, when we are dealing with investments, we are evaluating the feasibility of projects. We are interested from the perspective of a firm. We're interested on the weighted average cost of capital and not just in the cost of equity, which is what we have been looking at so far before. We have part of our assets that are financed with equity and part of our assets that are financed through debt. And therefore, we will have a cost of funds that comes from the combination of these two sources of funding. So, how do we end up calculating this WACC, the weighted average cost of capital? The first thing is to acknowledge the weight of our assets that are financed with debt. So, according to this question, this is 60%. And then, of course, the remaining portion of our assets is financed with equity because both account equity and debt must add up to the 100% of the assets. Okay, that's a pretty straightforward notion. And now we have the cost. Now, the cost we need when we look at debt, there is one advantage of uh, money that is coming from debt, which is that we pay the interest expense to our creditors, but the interest expense is fully deductible uh, from tax. So tax is fully tax deductible. So because it is tax deductible, in other words, we're paying it with pre-tax money. Let's assume if I am paying $1 in the form of interest expense to a creditor, then that means that I can report that $1 as an expense and therefore as an interest expense, and therefore it will be deducted, fully deducted from taxable income. That will imply a tax shield or reduced tax expense by 40 cents. In this case, we are assuming that the tax rate is 40%, right? Just in this hypothetical scenario. So we are interested in the after-tax cost of debt, which is okay, what is the interest expense? But let me subtract the tax benefit that I will get from that interest expense. And we can do with that in the following way. If the pre-tax cost of debt, which we are given here in this question, is 2%, and the taxes are 40%, then the after-tax, and I will write the formula here, is a pre-tax cost of debt um, after tax will be equal to cost of debt pre-tax multiplied by 1 minus tax rate. And I'm just writing it as intuitive as possible so anybody reading it can understand that. So after tax cost of debt is 2% multiplied by 1 minus that 40%, and there we go, it's 1.2%. So when we are calculating the WACC, right, uh, let's consider the after tax cost of debt. Let's use the pre-tax cost of debt here, 2%, and the cost of equity is 12%. And now when we calculate the WACC, well, the WACC will be simply the weighted average. So what is the weight of my assets? How much of my assets are financed with debt? And then that multiplied by the after-tax cost of debt plus how much of my assets are financed with equity, and that multiplied by the cost of equity. Okay. And if we had some other sources of funds, such as preferred shares being issued or other, then we would add, okay, what is the weight of source 3 multiplied by the cost of source 3, right? But here we have only 2, so we can keep it there. And then that's it. The WACC is 5 point. Now you can also um, so the formula of the weighted average cost of capital, you will usually read it in the following way: weight of debt, and I will just make it short, times the cost of debt times 1 minus the tax rate plus weight of equity times the cost of equity, right? And then plus weight of source 3 times the cost of 3 and weight of source 4 times the cost of 4, but here we don't have 3 or 4, so this is the whole formula. And so you, instead of having this two-step process where we first calculated the after-tax cost of debt, you can also just directly do weight of debt times the cost of debt times 1 minus the tax rate plus the weight of equity times the cost of equity, and there we go. It's pretty straightforward, and we have the WACC. Okay, so now we know how to calculate the WACC. I hope this was helpful. Thank you for your attention.